Well, when I look at the journey, I was very discouraged at first of, all right, I could go spend X amount of dollars and then actually maybe get nothing from it. Or I should, in order to make sure this even works, I should spend a whole bunch more money than the X amount of dollars I'm comfortable spending to do a true test to see if it even works. So it's like, oh, that really got me.
Today I'm speaking with Mark Ainley, co-founder of GC Realty Development based out of Chicago. Mark's company has grown to over 1,400 doors. They have rehabbed and stabilized over 500 homes and built a brand that attracts local investors and out-of-state investors. How he's done this is by creating a ton of educational-based content that invokes trust in people and helps get their name out there to investors in the Chicago market. So without further ado, let's get straight to it so you can start to learn from Mark what's worked, what hasn't worked, and all of the trials and tribulations he's faced along the way. Mark, thanks so much for joining me today. To start things off, can you tell everybody a little bit about your background, your experience, and how you got into property management?
Yeah, for sure. I didn't know I was in property management until I probably had a couple hundred doors. Ultimately, we started out in 2003 as wanted to be a brokerage. Actually wanted to be a commercial brokerage, even more specifically. And then it was just really easy to make money on the residential brokerage side leading up to the crash. And so we focused a lot more on that. But what we were selling a lot of too was investors, right? I could go to you, Steven, and say, hey man, I get you a property. I got my mortgage guy over here, and as long as you can fog him here, we'll get you a loan. And so we did a lot of that, and we made a lot of people a lot of money. We got a lot of people in properties, but a lot of them were always asking for management, and we fought it for a long time. One of my first investments I ever made, I had a horrible experience, had a victim, did everything wrong in the book, but so it kind of led me down that path of like, I don't want to do management. I'll just sell people these problems. That was kind of my mindset early on. But 2000, not too long after we started, 2006, we started taking on third-party management. But it was always a means to an end at that point. It was, all right, well, if I manage your property $50 a month, then that goes towards the electric. If I manage your property for $100 a month, we can get a water cooler now. Like it was always really just a means to the end of a little cash on the side to cover some overhead. But ultimately, market crash, we started investing, and we were still selling some properties to investors. And ultimately, we got about 250 doors, and my partner came in one day, and we were hiring people here, kind of here and there, people we knew, and he's like, man, everything's kind of chaotic. Everyone, this person's complaining about this person's saying this is a mess, and I'm like, man, we manage 250 doors and 500,000 square feet of commercial space, and we don't have a process. And like, we're sort of a property management company. And then a couple weeks later, I Googled property management in the town we were in, and the only property management company that came up in that town was another agent in my office that I didn't even realize was doing property management on the side. So I'm like, man, we've gotten this big, and we never, to your existence, we never even did any marketing yet. And I really think it's easy. You hear a lot of people say, I don't do any marketing, and they're under 250, 300 doors, and it's really easy to get 20, 30 referrals a year and continue to grow at that clip. But once you kind of get past that, it becomes necessary. So that was kind of a side note there. But yeah, that's ultimately, we really started focusing on property management in 2014, really started going deeper when we got involved in NARPM in 17, and here we are, 2026. About 1,450 doors today, 1 million square feet of commercial space, and we're enjoying it.
Got it. So from what it sounds like, the first 250 doors or so was really just through your network, people you knew from being in the real estate industry. I guess at what point did you realize that marketing and education would be a core growth lever for your business and not just, let's say, a nice to have?
Well, it's sort of on accident and on purpose. But, in 2018, 19, there's a lot of talk around departmentalizing sales and marketing, right? It was up until that point, it was me taking a call from an owner between showing a property and dispatching a work order. So it was always kind of just a in-between thing. Now, in 2018, when we really got serious, 18, 19, my partners basically said, all right, so leading up to that, operations always, I did a lot in the operation side, and when things started to smooth out, we actually started to have all the process in place and all that stuff. My partners kind of took the tone of like, all right, you got to get out of operations because you're actually the problem now. And he's like, I'm like, but I solved this problem. Yeah, you solved that, but you set 3 more fires on the way to trying to solve that with the team, and the team's pissed. And I'm like, all right, so they're like, you go figure out sales and marketing. So they sent me over to sales and marketing, and they sent me to create sales and marketing. And really what that kind of created anxiety in me at first. And I'm like, man, like now I have to do this. Now I have to have numbers, KPIs. I have to actually show up at the meetings and like explain my existence and so forth. forth. So, but I never really liked the sales thing. And even with real estate sales, it was truly the brokering idea. Like, all right, well, man, I got this great opportunity here, and you're looking to do this in your financial goals. Let's match these two up. A true definition of a real estate broker. But with property management, after 2008 to 2018, we did a lot of investing ourselves. And, we did BRRRR strategy, 482 properties, and we messed up so much. I always said that, I still say, we made $1,000 mistakes, so $1 million in mistakes. And I had so much of that value to give. And I found myself, when I started the sales journey, I get on the call with investors, like, no, you can't do that. You got to do this. So I started, like, all of a sudden, one-on-one educating all these people. And that got business just naturally. You help somebody, they in return feel obligated to hire you. And that turned into, all right, I keep repeating the same thing. Maybe I should put this into an ebook. Or I keep repeating the same thing. Maybe I should have a conference, a small mini conference on this. Or then ultimately turn it into the podcast. It's like, all right, I can only talk to 20, 30 people a week. If we do a podcast, maybe we can reach a couple hundred. So yeah, it's kind of the long answer to your short question.
Hey, quick break from the interview, just for a second. If you're listening to this podcast, there's a good chance you're looking to grow your property management business. Our team at Upkeep Media is offering a free property management lead generation session to all podcast listeners. Just visit our website at upkeepmedia.com/growth. Fill out the form on that page, enter the coupon code PODCAST, and you'll sign up for a free property management lead gen session. A team member will reach out to you at the time that you book. During that call, we'll show you what your top local competitors are doing to bring on new properties to manage. We'll take a look at where you're currently positioned online, and then give you actionable strategies that you can use to grow your property management business. Just visit upkeepmedia.com/growth, fill out the form on that page, and we'll speak with you soon. All right, let's get back to the interview. When you started, it doesn't sound like you really had a marketing background. And for anyone that's watching, GC Realty has probably one of the best marketing strategies that we've seen from a local property management company. So just hats off to you, Mark, because
thank you.
From what you're saying, it sounds like in 2018, you kind of were like, well, my partners don't really want me in operations. They want me to focus on marketing the business. I'm going to have to go and figure this out. I guess looking back, what marketing did you try, or what positioning mistakes did you make that if you had to go back and do it, like you would avoid those?
Well, when I look at the journey, I was very discouraged at first of, all right, I could go spend X amount of dollars and then actually maybe get nothing from it. Or I should, in order to make sure this even works, I should spend a whole bunch more money than the X amount of dollars I'm comfortable spending to do a true test to see if it even works. So it's like, that really got me on so many different levels. There's so many times, there's a big talk about radio at some point and flyers. And, so I went down this route of like, almost clicking let's go on all these different things so many different times, and that was, I don't know, that discouraged me early on in the marketing side. Like, you could try a whole bunch of new things, and even the free stuff too, right? I could go send a million emails and I might not get anything from it. But I think my original train of thought was that was so discouraging. But now it's shifted into like, this is fun and let's experiment. Now I've still, and I think it's more fun now because I think there's so much digitally that you could do that's not crazy expensive, that you could test out or do for 6 months or a year, or commit to something for a year and a half, whatever it might be. And at the end of the day, even if you still do get a handful of clients out of that, the CAC isn't crazy. Your cost of acquisition of a client, like, so the ability to experiment with digital has kind of made it so much more fun versus all the kind of paper, billboard, radio, all that type of stuff that was kind of fading out as I was getting into marketing. So that's kind of where my mindset's changed of like, it used to be, this is the fear of like, this is a waste, to now it's the opportunity because other people aren't trying it, right? So if I try, so a lot of what I've been driven by, creating video, doing different campaigns, or, putting together, different lists for investors that I can then use as a lead magnet, like all of that. My motivation's been, all right, no one else is doing it, so I want to do it before someone else does it, because then they won't do it because I'm already doing it. So a lot of, same with video. I was saying in 2020 or 2020, you got to get out. If you do video right now, it's your kind of competitive advantage because no one's going to be doing it in 2 years. Or everyone's going to be doing it in 2 years. But that's still the case right now. It's still the competitive advantage of almost any market. There's probably only 1 or 2 people that are really the face of property management in that city. So it's such a huge competitive advantage.
Yeah, it's wild. The level of competition from a marketing standpoint in property management is just so low because most people don't want to do it. And what ends up happening is just, as you said, you're in a pretty big market. You're in Chicago. It's not a small town. And as you said, that there's maybe 1 or 2 other companies that are doing it, right? So the fact that you were willing to get out there and actually put your face in front of the camera record podcasts, like that at this point has set you heads and tails above all of your competitors. You do produce a lot of content, YouTube, podcasts, blog posts. From what I understand, you do live speeches as well. How do you decide what content to create, which channels to prioritize? Like, how did you figure out where to roll out? And I guess to date, what's worked best? What's been worth the time?
I still don't have it figured out 100%, but it's always the testing of it. But what I like right now, so I only started listening to Gary Vee about a year ago, and he's a maniac. But the main thing I've taken away from him is that you could promote, everything's free. So everything you list out, all those different sources, even when you start getting into like Medium and all these other different websites, Substack, all that, like everything's free. So the ability to take things to put it now where I was kind of where you get overwhelmed is like, I have all these different places. Like, how do I even create that much content? But I think what we've been trying to do this last year is take a piece of content, and it might be a podcast episode, or it might be a article, and I think I've tried to up my game as far as keeping things interesting. You can only put so many, 3 things you should look out for when leasing a property in Chicago. You can only put so much of that content out there. So trying to keep it more interesting. And when I say more interesting, what I've been doing is taking our data, the 400 units we leased last year, and here's our numbers of how long it took us, how many times we had to drop the price. So just trying to create some more interesting stuff. But what we'll do is we'll take that article, try to write it well with the data and try to make it interesting. We all know that thumbnail, that's 80% of it, getting that thumbnail so people actually want to see it. But we'll take that then, and then we will put that into the drip that I created for Lead Simple. And we'll talk about drips here in a second. And then the drip that we created, the drip that goes to Lead Simple, that goes to, call it 4,000 people that have raised their hand and have some sort of interest in our what we do in the last 5-6 years. We'll put the drip into our email blast that we send through MailChimp, which is a list that we can talk about building lists too. It's about 50,000 people right now. And then we take that article and we spin it and put something, change up the write-up put into LinkedIn then, and you drive. And the goal in all this is drive people back to our website. And then, some of the long form stuff, I don't necessarily do too much of the driving back to the website. A lot of like the Instagram, TikTok, and we have multiple different accounts between the podcasts and all that stuff. A lot of that stuff is more of just kind of quick hit. I'm not trying to really drive too many people back. Maybe they'll find the podcast or something like that. But I don't have that's more of exposure than it is I'm trying to get conversion, I guess.
So one thing that I've noticed from talking to a lot of property management companies is there's kind of confusion between email marketing versus Lead Simple. Can you kind of differentiate what the difference is? Because you mentioned you have 50,000 people on MailChimp that you're sending out regular emails to, and then you also have your drip campaign on Lead Simple. How do you use each one?
Yeah, so Lead Simple, these people, if they're in your Lead Simple, they've raised their hand and said, I'm somewhat interested in what you do. So it's not, maybe 20% of them you never talk to, 20% are just kind of kicking tires. Another large chunk might have a property and they're self-managing. Another large chunk might be truly serious about investing or in the process of it. And we've built out, everyone that comes in our system really falls into 5 categories. Let me make sure I get these right. They're self-managing. They're with another property manager. They are looking to buy a property. They're looking to move out and rent, or maybe they just downloaded a lead magnet. And I'm not sure what the hell, because I never could get a hold of them. So, and then we have a 6th one, never able to get a hold of. That's more generic. But all 6 of those in Lead Simple will update every year with every 7 days some sort of messaging. Now, how that messaging ties back to a quick little summary directing them back to our website. A lot of the Lead Simple traffic, we really want to get to our website to get them back, remembering who we are, why they're on our website, and doing that. But again, it's a lot of that. We're tying back that same content and keep them updated. But it's specific to what they're doing. So the looking to move out and rent, it's about, hey, you should refinance as an owner occupant before you move out. Now it's much harder to get financing. Or, hey, if you're getting your place ready, keep these things in mind. This is what renters are looking for in the Chicago market. Now, the person that's looking to buy, it's like, hey, our podcast is a great resource. Here's 4 episodes that talk about house hacking in Chicago, or here's our top 3 lenders that we have that, and here's some clips on it. So we try to gear those towards it. So Lead Simple is a lot more direct. Now they get through that first year or whatever, and we'll update the content and all that. But at MailChimp, then it's more of like, I got to get these people to engage. We literally call the campaign "Get People to Engage," and that's, I'm sure you're familiar with them. But anyone else out there, Neil Patel. Neil Patel is one of the biggest marketers out there, and he doesn't necessarily service companies our size, but he really opened my eyes to. I used to send out a MailChimp like once every 2 weeks, and I'm like, I don't want to annoy people, right? And now, like, I signed up to Neil Patel, and it's like, man, he sends me shit every single day, Monday to Sunday, like. And the thing is, like, this stuff's interesting. So one, it makes me want to look at it. But two, the people that does annoy, they probably are going to unsubscribe and never going to hire me anyway. So I really don't care. The people that I do want to hire me are probably interested in this content and curious about what I'm thinking or what our company's thinking. So I think for the MailChimp thing, we shifted this past year. So we're sending out 3 times a week, Neil kind of short thing, but it's always driving people back to our website again. And then one of those MailChimps a week is promoting the new podcast episode that came out. And we'll put a couple other kind of resources in that promotion.
Yeah. And the people that are subscribed to you on MailChimp, how did they come to be versus the people in Lead Simple? Or is it once they go through a year of Lead Simple, they automatically send it to MailChimp? How does that work for you?
It's both. So the people that go in our Lead Simple do end up in our MailChimp. So they do get kind of double touch. They're getting every 5-6 days in Lead Simple, and then they get 3 times a week. So they're getting hit pretty hard there. And then in Chicago, we have 30,000 realtors. That's another big chunk of that list that a long time, about 5-6 years ago, I literally paid my kids 5 cents an email to pull it out from the MLS one at a time. So, and it needs to be updated somewhat. But, I've worked with a couple lenders, a couple other kind of guys in my network, like, hey man, let's swap lists. And so they're very hyper Chicago investor lists that we have. And then people subscribe then as well too. They sign up for the newsletter. We have different things that we're always trying to, hey, sign up for more information. So, and that adds them to the list as well too. So that's what makes up that 50-60. Now, the one thing I realized in the last year was there's people that have not even opened an email in 6 years, and that hurts my MailChimp thing. So we learned some of that around like, hey, so get rid of some of the old stuff. It's not about having so many emails. It's about who's actually engaging. So we learned a little about that this past year.
For those that don't understand that, what happens is it impacts your deliverability rate, right? So if you have a ton of people that never open emails, it kind of flags it almost as like this might be a lower quality email. So that's why you always want to, basically you call it cleaning up your email list. So a lot of property management companies out there are hesitant or scared of investing in long form content because it feels slow, right? It's not like a pay per lead where you pay money and the next day you get a lead. I guess how long did it take you before you started to see a real business impact?
So I think it came before on the SEO side, more so than it did the like, hey, I liked your article, I want to talk more side. And that has been huge for us on the SEO side, just generating those leads. And one of the things early on about some of the marketing was like, it's really hard to trace it back to the hardcore source. It's like, I found you online. It's like, well, which site? Well, I found you on Google. It's like, it's like, what made you go to Google to so all those type of things. But the SEO side has been huge, especially one of this is our own challenge is, we promote Chicago Property Manager, but we are 30 minutes outside the city. So if we're talking about the trifecta on Google and tying back to where you're at in the map, like we're way out there. So we have even more of a challenge to solidify ourselves as a Chicago property manager. Now we got plenty of stuff out in the suburbs, and we have 282 suburbs here in Chicago that we're always trying to rank up high, but those are pretty easy compared to we're always trying to compete for 1 through 7 in the Chicago side.
And what you were able to do, to be honest, was solely because you built a brand. Because one thing that it heavily impacts SEO is how many brand name searches does this company have. And if you think of it logically, if a company has a lot of brand name searches, it must be a pretty big company. Google's smart enough to figure that out. And as a result, you were able to pull off something that most property management companies would not be able to because of the fact that you built a brand. So I guess, can you walk us through a little bit, once a lead comes in, what happens next? What happens next? Like, walk us through your sales process. Is it, they call in, you give them your pricing, and then if they sign up, great, or is it a little bit more in depth than that?
We're big on speed to lead when we can make it happen. So I have a BDM. He's newer. I've only had 2 BDMs since. So I sat in that BDM role, full disclosure, up until 22. And then I found somebody, actually they found me through the podcast, and it was a success story. And he actually got promoted to director of property management. So it's a total success story.
What size were you when you decided to finally move out of the sales role?
We're probably about 1,000 doors, 1,100 doors. So we're fairly a good size at that point. But that was kind of like the bane of my existence. I think some of the like only I could do this moment I was having too in that, and I really enjoyed the BDM role as well too. So, but I really looked at capacity. Like, all right, we could probably, if we could continue, if I could spend more time on the marketing side, I could probably get us to where we need about a BDM and a half, which means this person can come in and I could help kind of be that half when needed. So that was kind of how I got myself out of that. But we have a newer guy in there right now, and we're always talking about speed to lead, and you definitely see the difference especially if you're getting some of these pay-per leads, Thumbtack or APM leads, stuff like that. If you can't call within the first half hour, like you're not going to get it. So, but that being said, we have everything in Lead Simple, where bam, they go into Lead Simple, they get a video welcome, and then they get a couple quick text messages as well too. But then our goal is always to direct them back to the Calendly link to schedule a time. And we have about a 35% Calendly hit rate, which is pretty good. We're up from about 23% a few years ago. But our goal is to get them on a call, and if they don't schedule a call right away, we're trying to call them right away.
Is there a reason you don't allow them to schedule the call right when they're reaching out to you? So, for example, they fill out the form, then they're redirected to a Calendly page to book a call.
They do. That's there too. Yeah. So that is a page. Yep. So yep, we have that for all of our lead magnets. It's like, all right, you sure you don't want to schedule a call right now? So yep, for sure.
I think one thing that I've seen hands down be the most popular way to grow or the most successful way to grow is the owner handles sales till about 1,000 doors, make 800, but close to that mark. And then at that point, it makes sense to bring on a BDM. And it's like 9 out of 10 companies that we work with that have scaled past 1,000 doors have followed that exact strategy. I think one thing that a lot of companies miss on is hiring a BDM when you have 200 doors. Look, if you really can't do sales is one thing, but you need leads for a successful salesperson, right? If you're hiring a salesperson and you're expecting them to go out there and generate all their leads and do all of the sales, you're not utilizing them to their full potential. If you have the leads to feed them and all that salesperson can do is sell, that produces the best results. Because the best salespeople want to work in that type of environment where all day they can be selling, not prospecting. So it sounds like you kind of followed a similar journey.
I can't agree with you more on that. Like, there's been a lot of talk as leads have slowed down here in the past, call it 18 months, of like, go do outbound. Because I really think an outbound salesperson and an inbound salesperson are really two different people in a way as well too. So I think to your point, your number one thing is to get enough leads so you can hire an inbound guy that only handles your inbound. Because think about this, you could go send your guy out to a networking event. Like, for me, it took me years to build up rapport with a group of people or a networking group or individuals to start. I had to send them so much business for them to start sending me business, like years. And the lifespan of a BDM, I think in our industry, if I recall, it was like 18 months. So by the time that guy even gets cranking, like, he's gone. And then they're calling him when he's at his next job already.
Yeah, exactly. And if they have to wait 18 months till they can finally start to get some leads coming in,
they're going to get discouraged too, and they're going to be upset faster. So that's not good either.
Yeah, 100%. So I guess from your experience, what marketing tactics do you think property management companies over-rely on or overestimate?
Well, I guess I can answer that in the reverse of they underestimate the SEO side of things. When you start growing indoors, no matter what, you're going to have, call it 10, some people have lower, but I mean, really you're going to have that 10 to 20% churn. So as you get more doors, you have to offset those doors just to break even, right? It's just a math problem. And the ability to continue your referrals and get that in through your network ends up two reasons. One, you have to keep up pace, right? If you got 20 referrals one year, now you need 40 just to keep up because you grew 100 doors last year. So, and then also as the operator of the business, you're networking less because now you're stuck in the business. So which means your referral sources or that rapport you have with your community is going down a little as well too. So getting out ahead of that faster. But that SEO is that slow bake, getting that stuff on there, and when we say SEO, it's a very general thing, right? But it's like taking your website and not making it a brochure and having it be a little more interactive and, having a video. We try to put a video on every single page, and it's 2-3 minute videos. It's super easy. And we can talk about some of the things that I've gotten over as far as doing videos faster, but just optimizing that, and then the content you're putting on there for the keywords, and it's just so easy these days to create content. And even if you're going to have some sort of AI created and you go through and clean it up 30%, I think that's still valuable SEO content.
So what are some tactics that you use to create videos faster? Because I know a lot of people are hesitant to do that. I imagine when you first started, it probably took you 4 times the amount of time as it does now. Do you have any tips for anyone?
Yeah, so don't edit them. Make them short, and don't a lot of people are like, this guy's got to edit this video, I got to send it off. So 2 things. One, I bought this little remote thing that you can put your iPhone on the stand, and then you can start recording and stop recording. So now I don't have to cut out the beginning or the end of me leaning forward to hit the stop button on my phone. So that's something. So I could take that video from my phone and go right to LinkedIn with that. I don't have to do any editing on it. So that's been huge for us. And you can do the same thing. You turn your phone sideways for your Instagram Reels or whatever. And I think people they worry too much about the editing side of things. When you say the word dollars in your Instagram video and a dollar sign floats up from above your head, like no one cares about that. They really, like, it doesn't have to look that sexy. So here overall, people care far less than you think. And it's taken me, I turn 45 tomorrow, so I was thinking about some things that 25 versus 45-year-old Mark is thinking. And that was one of the things, like I used to be very worried about what other people think. And now at 45, it's like, people just don't care. If you have a good message, or you have a good, or if you're exciting, or if you have something that entertains them, like they don't care what if you have a pause, you have an up or whatever, and that actually makes it more real, right? And in this day of AI, if you have a bluff or you say a word wrong and you actually make fun of yourself in the video, like those things are okay. So don't worry about the 10 takes and having to send it to your guy that took you 3 months on Upwork to find to do it. Just record it and post it. And that's the thing I like. You and me talked about recording lives a little while ago. That's the other thing too. I teamed up with, here's a kind of a cool little hack someone could do too, is there's another property manager in my market that he really does almost the opposite things that he does in areas C and D class more, neighborhoods I don't really go into, and he doesn't really go into areas and out here in the burbs and stuff like that. So every Thursday we get together, and I say every, but we're on 4 in a row. Our goal is to keep going for the year here. We nicknamed it Chicago Landlord Secrets, and we get on for 40 minutes, and we're live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And then we're able to create articles from that and maybe some clips from that. But again, all I need to do is really set up the invite. It's set up the, StreamYard. We talked about that a little. And if anyone has any questions about how to set that up, it's really easy. It's just $10 subscription and connect your socials to it.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that you don't necessarily have perfect tracking. You don't know where every single lead came from. What was it that made you go, okay, I don't know where every single lead is coming from, but I'm going to just keep at it? Because a lot of people, when they can't make that direct correlation right away, they give up. And usually what happens, especially when you're in I'll call it the content game, when you're producing content consistently, is it takes time to build up. And a lot of people probably give up before they get to a point where it's going to start to make a benefit. So I guess for you, like, what is it that allowed you to continue even though you couldn't directly correlate, okay, our lead flow has gone up because we're doing this podcast or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I think it comes down to tracking your CAC, your client acquisition costs. And at the end of the year, if our goal is always to be right around 1,100. I'm going to do these efforts here. I'm going to do these efforts here. I'm getting some feedback here. I can't, when someone downloads an ebook from your website, it's like, you're on my website. I don't know how you got to the website though. So that used to be discouraging. Now it's just like, I'm grateful that guy's in the system, and now I have these other ways that I can market this guy, and maybe I'll get him to the table to engage. So really tracing it back to our average number of costs on an annual basis is really what kind of keeps me feeling good about it.
So is it every year you reevaluate all the marketing strategies, and let's say you've implemented a new strategy for 2026, at the end of 2026, you'll go and you'll look at your client acquisition costs and be like, hey, has it decreased or increased?
Yeah, so we really check that on a monthly basis. I call it a rolling 12. But we, for example, I think it was 2-3 years ago, we're like, let's go hard on Facebook ads. And a lot of it was around, listening too much to Alex Hormozy and how he does stuff on there. And I'm like, all right, let's just go hard. It's like spend like $2,000 a week. And like, so we did that for about 5 months, and we're like, we clearly got nothing from this. Like, our actually lead volume's gone down. Like, and so we shifted right away, and then we did some things. And that really got us into like, all right, now we got to balance out our CAC for the year because we just spent all that money and didn't get anything from it. So that really got us into like, all right, let's put the labor into creating more content and doing some of this back to the low-hanging fruit of cleaning up the website and stuff.
Yeah. So property management is kind of a unique industry. And from what we've seen, generally paid ads are not the best way to really scale a property management company. The cost of acquisition is quite high. Have you had success with paid ads, or has it really all been through organic content?
So we had somebody doing Google AdWords for a while, and I wasn't able to trace any of that. So if you really, when I was able to look at the UAC or where it was coming from, I was able to trace very little back to the $4,000 we were spending a month. And we're doing that for years. And it was more, again, it's like we felt we had to have that presence. We saw it up there, but we weren't sure 100%. But then we switched that to another person that was handling it, more of a third party, where they built their own landing page for us. They were just charging us per lead. And we've seen great activity from that. But again, that CAC is higher. I think our CAC for our Google ads ends up being about $2,400 a person, which I'm fine with because there's a whole bunch of other lower things. So that was kind of going back for, and then you have the APM leads and stuff like that. And those just end up, I think the question around getting all property management leads and those ones you pay for is like, can you get a couple, and is all the time you spent chasing the ones that sucked or the ones that weren't valid worth your time? And that's what you have to justify, I guess. But yeah, so majority of it has been, when you look at now we just started doing a kind of marketing plan, I think in 2021. And I took it from I've shared this before with the management community, what's it, one-page marketing plan? And that's how we created a marketing plan. We do that every year. But again, when you look at our marketing plan, it ends up being a lot more labor than anything of trying to get this done. And to speak to the labor, I don't have a huge force. It's literally myself, which I would say I spend about 30, if the time of creating content and podcasts and all that stuff, call it half my time is in marketing. And then I have a full-time remote team member that he's been with me for 3 or 4 years that he's pretty good. So
you mentioned right now, from what it sounds like, the ads you do run, it's the highest CAC. So for anyone that's watching doesn't understand what CAC is, it's client acquisition cost. You said $2,300 you're fine with, which is quite expensive, but I understand why you're saying you're fine with it. But I just want you to explain to everybody why you're okay with it. How do you determine what client acquisition cost is acceptable?
Yeah, so you can look at client acquisition costs in the sense of how much it costs you to get that client. And one client might cost you $2,300, but if I have other clients that, it was a referral, obviously a referral is free, right? Short of, you could really compound the time you have put into a relationship, all that stuff, but there's no spend on that. So it's $0 or $200, whatever you maybe paid a referral fee or whatever, $250. I think just the law of averages. Back to as long as we're tracking our CAC on an annual basis and we're around that $1,100 mark, then there's always going to be things that are going to be more expensive, and that's how we have to kind of go about trying to, when we test things, and how much we're willing to spend to get somebody. I mean, at the end of the day, if you told me today I have this awesome client and he's got this property and it's got a high RPU, obviously a higher quality, and it was going to cost you $3,000, I'd probably say, yeah, we'll figure it out. Let's do it. Yeah. So,
and I imagine that's because the client lifetime value is much higher than that.
Yes, exactly. So, understanding your client lifetime value is another big proponent of this. So right now, I believe we're at about 6.5 years as far as average client. And we also have maintenance too. So we have not only the RPU side of things for the property management, but we also get it's probably ends up being, you add another 80 to 100 RPU just from the maintenance side of things, if not more than that, maybe even a little more when you start accounting for turnovers and all that.
Yeah, makes sense. So what you always want to do is basically compare your client lifetime value with the client acquisition cost. If your client lifetime value is $15,000 and you're spending $3,000 to acquire that client, you're still going to end up with a 5x return. Is there a certain CAC to client lifetime value ratio that you look for that is acceptable?
I don't know exactly how to answer that, but the one thing that really makes our CAC even super more valuable is onboarding 50% of our properties vacant, where we get that lease up. And we're fortunate here in the Chicago market, you get a full month's rent for leasing a place up. So a lot of times you might have a $3,000 or $4,000 place and you're able to lease it up in the first 90 days, which, man, more than covers your CAC. So I think one of the things we watch for is making sure that balance of vacant versus not vacant is pretty close.
So if you were going back in time to when you started your journey in property management, you started GC Realty again today, what is the one thing you would change from a marketing and sales standpoint that you think would help your company succeed at a faster pace?
I think I could answer the same answer anywhere in my life, more faster. Here's the thing, just talking to a lot of property managers, now I'm fortunate that as an owner operator, I have the time and the partners to work in this side of things. So for those of you listening, like, oh, that's not fair, I don't got time, I don't have that guy. Like, it's true that I do have that advantage, but I think I've wasted a lot of years just not doing more and getting more out there, and just there's always opportunity to do more marketing, and you probably could never have enough out there, and putting more time into it. Some years I would get sucked back in operations thinking I'd go solve a problem over there, but at the end of the day, a lot of your operations problem gets solved with growth. And if you start growing and you start losing clients, like all of a sudden you'll fix those problems. So I think a lot of if you focus more on the marketing sales side of things, that will eventually force you to solve your operations issues faster.
Makes sense. Awesome. Mark, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. For anyone that wants to connect with you, what would be the best place for them to reach out?
Yeah, I'm out there on Crane. I'm out there on LinkedIn. My Instagram, Mark Ainley, REI. Check out our website, gcrealtyinc.com, or our podcast website, straightupchicagoinvestor.com. So
cool. Thanks so much, Mark.
I appreciate it.